Hype Man, Raj Nation, the GOAT to market. From Hype HQ in Chicago, Illinois, Startup Hype Man presents the GOAT to Market Show. What's up, everyone? I am your host, Raj Nation, the founder and chief pitch artist of Startup Hype Man. This podcast is where we bring you founders, company leaders, and creatives who are building it, who are doing it, who have been there and done that. And they pull back the curtain on their go-to-market strategies so that you can build a venture that you love and become the GOAT of your industry. Want first listen on episodes before anyone else? Subscribe to our newsletter at startuphypeman.com. You will get alerts every Sunday morning when we release new episodes. All right, let's hear how today's guest is becoming the GOAT. Ladies and gentlemen, making his way to the microphone, originally residing in the streets of Sacramento, but currently out of San Diego, California, he is the founder and CEO of Reed Between the Lines. He is Devin Reed.
Shout out to anyone who knew what that song was. That would be the walkout song on top of that.
I like that.
That's my go-to. There's a lot of DMX playing rent-free. He's getting no royalties for the DMX being played in my head.
I have a good DMX story. I'll share it in a second.
Okay.
Let me tell everyone else who Devin Reed is for a second.
Sure.
So Devin joins us today on the GOAT to Market show. This is actually his second appearance on the show. He first appeared 6 years ago, back in 2019, when he was just like a wee baby in the field that we're about to talk a whole lot about. At that time, he had just recently been promoted to the content marketing team, or moved over to the content marketing team from the sales team at Gong, which shortly after became a billion-dollar valuation company, a unicorn. He was ultimately the head of content at Gong. He then became head of content at Clary, another unicorn startup. And then he started doing his own things on the side, and that was the creation of Reed Between the Lines, R-E-E-D, Between the Lines, named after his last name. Devin, through Reed Between the Lines and his previous work, has amassed nearly 100,000 LinkedIn followers. He produces, in my opinion, the best B2B podcast that exists. And I say this as a podcast host of a B2B show for the most part. Devin produces the best B2B podcast that exists on the planet today. I had the opportunity to be a guest on his show in his first season over a year ago. And if you've been following along with this season's episode feed, you might recognize his name because 2 episodes ago, as a bonus, we republished the audio from that podcast. He's building up a YouTube presence. He's been doing things on TikTok and Instagram as well. He knows content, and he's a good friend of mine. I'm excited to have you back, Devin. Today, we're going to talk about where content is going. So once again, welcome back to the show. A little bit older, a little bit wiser. I want to know, how are you doing today? But also, why is this topic, where content is going? Why is it on your mind? Why is it important to you?
I'm doing good today because Friday is the day I get to drop off my girls to school. So I got to do that. And then I get to hang out with you on a podcast right after. Like my Friday is cooking. I love it. And yeah, why is it? I mean, I the reason I actually kind of pitched this idea to you was because I just went to 4 different marketing events over 5 weeks, which I don't recommend anybody do. It's too much travel. But the 2 questions I did get a lot, and I know, like, influencers are like, everyone's asking about my morning routine, so I'm going to show you my morning. Like, okay, this isn't that. This is like actually what people are asking is, 1, what are the bets that I'm taking next year? And where do they think, like, what's next for content was kind of the 2 questions. And really that's kind of the same question. It's kind of like, what do you think is going to happen? And what are you doing as a result? So I thought that might be something fun we could jam on. Yeah.
And we will jam a whole lot more on that. Let's do a little bit of a different start to this conversation, though, and just talk a little bit more about Devin. See, when you were last on the show, again, it was 2019. What's different about Devin then versus now? No, I will say this. Categorically, you were not a father then. You are a father now. You lived in San Francisco then. You live in San Diego now. But take the categorical things out of the equation. Like, in terms of the growing of a person, what was Devin then versus what's Devin, or who's Devin now?
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you a question, then I'll answer that. I don't know if this is just me, but I had this belief that people don't change. Like, I feel like I saw it in movies. Like, it was a theme in movies. Like, people don't change, and like they're always going to be who they are. And like, I don't know. I think just subconsciously or unconsciously, I just always believe like you are who you are. And the last 5 years have proved that that is completely untrue, and I was misguided. Did you grow up kind of thinking that, feeling that, or is that maybe just a me thing? Like, I feel very much like it was like I got signals from outside that like people don't change. Like, this was just like a thing. Like, you are who you are.
I don't know if I've believed that or currently believe that. I think there's a core sort of like base that you probably always fall back to or do things from, but it doesn't. I do think that I don't carry that belief that people don't change.
Yeah. Well, I did until like 5 years ago, and I was like, oh, I guess people are who they are. And then the last 5 years, I don't believe that at all, because I've changed so much where it's like almost alarming in a good way of like how much I can and how much I've been able to change. So some of those things are, one, I think like becoming a dad. So I have two kids, or two girls, 3 and 5. Like, I think I went into fatherhood very aware that people lose their identity. You know, moms lose their identity of who they are, and dads, and however you identify listening to this podcast, is like, yeah, that changes. And I really wanted to hold on to like, you know, this Devin persona I think I had maybe curated and created. And then like there was just like this tug of war of like, but you are dad. So my Devin first and my dad first. And I think for a few years I kind of struggled, like didn't want dad to be number one. And now I feel like I am obviously Devin first, but like dad is my number one role. And it kind of is like the persona I wear all the time, I guess, maybe. And it's actually been relieving, because I don't feel like I have that tug of war struggle internally anymore. I'm like, yeah, I know who I am, this new who I am. And I really enjoy it. I take a lot of pride in that. So I think like that's changed. I think my internal pace has changed a bit. You know, I worked at sales and then hyper growth startups, and there's this thing I kind of call like old wiring of like, you have to work as many hours as you can, work as hard as you can. And a lot of my self-worth was based on my success, external success, you know, money, you know, things that you own, status, all that stuff. And lately I've been kind of pulling out that old wiring and putting in new wiring, which is more of like, what matters most is, you know, how do my kids think about me? How does my wife think about me? How do my close friends think of me? And obviously, most importantly, am I happy with the choices I make and the way that I hold myself? And it's been very freeing to care more about that than, which is hard to do. Like, I'm very active on social media. It's super hard to be like, I have brand deals and followers, and that's important to me, and perception is super important. And it's not that important anymore. You know what I mean? So there's still this kind of conflict, but it's been starting to be more resolved, if this is making sense. And I'm feeling more free and kind of like clear internally of like, I know who I am. And I'm more of just kind of allowing myself to accept I do have these conflicting parts of my life of, you know what I mean? Where like the public persona and the Devin persona, they have to coexist if I'm going to keep making money on social, you know, and online.
It sounds like maturity. Like you've your mindset has matured over time.
But if I had been like, I'm more mature, that would have been a shitty answer. So I had to give you the long 4-minute spiel.
Yeah. What's interesting for me is you said like you had that conflict of like, am I like a dad first or am I Devin? And I think, you know, I don't have kids, but as we think about, you know, potentially where we may go in life, that is something that I often have thought about. Like, to each their own. I personally have never resonated when someone will like put in like their bio of a whatever, like dad first or mom first or 3x mom or 3x dad or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I get it. But for whatever reason, that's never like landed well with like me. And maybe that would change in the future. But I do think there is this like, for a lot of people, there is this consciousness over the loss of your identity. But I also think there's different approaches to parenting too. Like, you know, some of my friends,
for sure,
they have, and it kind of sounds like you guys are similar, at least, is the friends who are parents of mine that I really admire. They take this approach of like, we are integrating our children into our lives. We are not stopping our lives because we have children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that a lot. Hard to do for sure, but I think keeping things separate feels even weirder. Then so yeah, I try to combine it all. Like there's no such thing as balance. There's no balance. I've never closed the laptop on a Friday and been like, nailed it. I'm so at peace internally. And I put all, I did the work thing perfectly and the husband role and the kids like, no, that just never happens. And so I like the word integrate because it's like, look, man, so much life is moving fast. I feel like I'm moving slower metaphorically and probably physically. And so I'm like, time is the most precious thing. I think maybe that's like, you're at some level of maturity is when you like really value time over money or time over status is like, I'm really at that point in my life where if I could have 30 or 40 hours a day, I would take it, and not to work more, but just to have more time for all the things that I love.
So the other, I think, big change though for you has been you went from full-time employee to full-time employee with a side business, and then full-time employee with side business, and then a side podcast. And then a couple months into doing the podcast, you said, all right, full-time, like side business is now my full-time business and I'm done being an employee elsewhere. What was that like journey? Like not necessarily like the 10-year journey, but like that decision to say, all right, this is the quote unquote bet I'm going to place on myself and I'm going for this.
Yeah. So I was at Gong and then I was at Clary, and that was the kind of like where I had the side gig. And while I was at Clary, it became very clear that the side gig, like we crossed 6 figures one year. And so I was like, okay, that's a substantial amount of money. I wonder / bet if I made it my full-time focus, like if I focused more here, could this, could it support my whole family and be a full paycheck and all that good stuff? So that kind of signal hit of like, hey, maybe I'm really onto something. And then the other part was running the podcast. So the business is the Reeder, the podcast is Read Between the Lines. And as I was going around from, it's an in-person show for folks who don't know. So we went to San Francisco, Chicago, and Brooklyn and recorded like 3 to 4 episodes and interviews at each city. And I hadn't really shared this, but like me and my wife had, we actually had a third daughter that almost made it to term. She made it to 30 days before term and she didn't make it. And that was about 2 months before I decided to launch the podcast. And it's, in hindsight, it was a terrible time. It was a terrible decision. It was the hardest loss of my life by far. But after like 45 days of just like this deep mourning, I kind of was like, I need something to focus on and to get my brain off of this a little bit, right? Not to forget what happened, but like, I just can't dwell in this anymore as hard as I have been. So I was like, I'd always wanted to do this show. So let me kind of, let's make this the thing and go big. And it was a good distraction. I didn't do the best job I could have done running the show and promoting the show for aforementioned reasons. My head wasn't quite right. But the reason I share all that was because the unexpected lesson was talking to people like you and talking to people like Jen Allen and Eddie Schlainer. Those were the Chicago folks. And so basically what I'd done when I picked my guests is I was like, I'm going to go pick my like friends and these highly creative people that I know and respect. And like, I'm just going to go learn from them and share it. Like the reason I love Raj, like I want that to come through in the show. So other people in my network can be like, oh, like I see, you know what I mean? Like I know Raj and I get to experience Raj in a way that like kind of through Devin's lens a little bit. Yeah. And so as I was going, like, I think San Francisco like was more of me just like, I'm rusty. I'm just trying to get this engine going. Chicago was like really pivotal for me because you, Eddie, and Jen were all solopreneurs or run your own businesses. And so as I like interviewed you, like I got energy. I'm like, wow, these people are like, I know it's challenging, but they seem to be having a lot of fun. We had a ton of fun on set and after. And then we went to Brooklyn and met some more solopreneurs. Melissa Rosenthal had like quit her job the night before the interview. Like she literally was in-house as like a VP and then was like, oh yeah, I quit last night. I don't have my job. And I was like, oh, wow. I've been thinking of doing that too. And here's this woman I like, why? Like, if you don't know Melissa Rosenthal, folks, like she's like 0.01%
on this show too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dude, she's, I literally love and respect her so much. So anyway, so she did that. And then I'm like, maybe this is my push, right? So I know I'm on a monologue here, but my point being is like, I think you kind of have to see that whole story arc for me to finally be like, you know what? I'm making decent money on the side. A lot of my friends are crushing it. They've been telling me good advice, like little things here and there. Hey, Deb, you could be doing, all these like little affirmations. And so I was like, you know what? Let me go all in and let me bet on myself and give it a year. And I didn't close the door behind me. I wasn't like, I'll never go back to corporate or F corporate. I'm like, I might go back. I don't know. But it's been 18 months and it's been one of the best career decisions I made, was to just go all in and to kind of take it month by month and just see how I like it. And if I don't like it, I can go do something else. I've already gone from sales to marketing and marketing to entrepreneurship.
Right.
But like, how many more pivots do I need to prove,
Well, and I remember when we did those episodes. I say those episodes because we did the one-on-one, but then we did the group episode, and I was also like kind of hanging out while the other people were recording.
Yeah, it was fun.
And I remember, I feel like uniquely, each of us at some point off camera were like, "So when are you just going to do this full time?"
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of like people will. I'm going to guess the people who have known you over the years have been like, even if you never did the podcast, people have been waiting for like when's Devin gonna branch off on his own moment? Because I was for like 3-4 years, I was probably like just in the background observing you, and I was like, it'll happen at some point soon. It'll happen at some point soon.
Yeah.
So it's almost like before you're gonna do it, it's already like this idea that like is just like in the air in some way.
It was, and I would like go to events too, and it would come up like, when are you going to go? Because and this is also this. I think there was this era, at least in the marketing world, of like this kind of 2-year period where it was like really cool or like overly glorified to like go solo. I don't know if you picked up on this. It felt like that to me, and I was like, I'm not a evangelical solopreneur. I'm not trying to preach the gospel and like get anyone to change their life journey. And so when I was out there and people would either having just done it or done it, in their past, or to your point, like other in-house marketers or whoever, like observing me, it came up a lot to the point where I'm like, it's actually unignorable. And maybe I'm the only one who doesn't see this obvious path in front of me. So I think between, to your point, like these interviews and people like you and others that I really like and respect, who are like, hey, so when are you going to do this? It gave me a lot of confidence bit by bit to be like, hey man, if you like made a map of everyone whose like opinion you would like care about, like almost all of them have told you this without asking. So maybe, so maybe it's right in front of you. And so then I was like, I eventually was like, all right, it probably is. Let me go for it.
The other thing you said that I think is really important is you're like, well, I could always just go back if it doesn't work out. And I feel like we place this unreasonable amount of permanence on the decisions that we make.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, there's like 2 decisions in life that are probably permanent.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, in theory, it should be like, if you're going to be a parent, you should probably stick around for being a parent.
Right.
Is probably one of them. And there's something else out there that I can't think of right now, but everything else is a temporary choice. And I think it's good to have the mindset of like, I'm all in, as they like to say, but also recognize that it's not over if it doesn't work out. Like, so the Startup Hype Man's my second business. My first one was called Idea Lemon, and that was from side business, like 2012, side project, not even business, 2012, 13-ish, and then becomes side business 2014, becomes main business 2015, and then towards the end of 2016, my co-founder and I shut it down. And I'll tell you, in that like build-up period, my entire identity was Idea Lemon, and I was convinced like this was going to be the thing that like, this is what my legacy, my professional legacy at least, is going to be forever. And it really, it was tough when we realized, after about like a little over a year or 2 years of doing it full time, that wasn't going to work. It was like a year and a half of full time. And I remember, so there was this conversation we were having, like, should we shut it down? And what the catalyst was, my co-founder was like, I'm out. We need to figure out like a buyout situation. And he was my co-founder. He was my close friend. He is still my close friend. We maintained our relationship, which is good. Yeah. But the sort of path was like, at first it was, how could you do this to me? Was like sort of my, thought process. Then we had to like have a couple discussions around like, we did sign an operating agreement. So either I need to buy him out or we need to decide we are shutting this thing down. And I just remember going to someone else whose opinion I valued. And I was like, hey, like if I had to shut this thing down, like, what would you think of me? And it sounds like stupid now to ask that question because it just seems
I
so
don't think so.
obvious.
Well, in hindsight's 2020.
Yeah. But at the time, again, like my identity was so wrapped up in it.
Yeah.
And I really thought like this idea of like you couldn't hack it is what like the prevailing sentiment would be.
Mm.
And he was like, wait, what? He was like confused by the question. He was like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I was like, if I have to like shut down my business, like, would you think less of me? And he was like, what? He's like, dude, people close businesses every day. Like,
Yeah.
he was like, no one cares. Do what you have to do. It's your life. And hearing that is what made me like be okay with it and like detach from like, hey, this was a thing I tried to build. Yeah. And we did some good for some people, but it didn't become the thing that works as the thing. And that can be okay.
That's funny. That's funny you say that because like if you had texted me and you're like, hey Dev, I'm shutting down Startup Hype Man, my first honest thought would be like, oh, I guess like that business model just didn't make sense anymore. Like, like there's something about the business that just wasn't quite right. Not Raj fucked up. Raj ain't, he can't do it. It literally wouldn't even be you can't do it or you made a mistake. Only when someone explodes spectacularly publicly are we like, well, that's probably why. That's probably why that business didn't work out. But like, yeah, it's like also I know I think too, you also have this I call it maybe like I have built-in bias towards you in a good way of like, well, you're the startup guy. So like startups are known to not always work. So like if you told me you had 14 quote unquote failed businesses before Startup Hype Man, I also wouldn't bat an eye and I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, he's a failure. It's just like, so my point being is like, we look at other people with so much more grace and understanding than we give ourselves.
Totally.
Which is like, I don't know, this really weird just thing that we all do. So I don't know. I meant to validate you and all that. It was like, yeah, it's weird that we do that to ourselves.
Yeah.
It sucks.
It is. And I think as is the case with anyone who owns a business, once or twice a year, I have that something will happen where I have that I'm like, should I keep doing this or not?
Which I think is healthy though, actually, if you think about it. Like you should, I do this all the time, like at least every quarter, a deep dive of like, is what I'm doing the right thing? And maybe not like the whole business per se, but like the way, like I just write down all the ways I'm making money. And it's like, do I want to keep making money this way? Do I like it? Is it sustainable? Is there a risk? So like, I think something that like my coach has helped me with is like, be the observer, be objective in looking at your own life and make observations before you spiral into like subjectivity and like, oh, this isn't going right because I'm bad and this is failing. And and you can like doom spiral. And so that's why like I try to do the objective lens of just like, let's just be real, or look at it like it's this, like write out my business and pretend it's not mine.
Yeah.
What advice would I give this person?
That's what I think that every now and then I'll try and do some iteration of that. Cause it's always, I will say like anytime you're looking at someone else's business and they ask you for advice, like it clicks like, oh, hey, if I were you, I would do this and this and this. But then like, you're like, why can't I do that for myself? So the taking a step back and just, even if it is like literally writing it down and saying, all right, here's the objective information before going into the doom spiral is super helpful. And I think also like, so when we did that podcast last year, as much as it helped you, it helped me. Cause I was coming off of like 5 straight months of like very poor sales.
Wow.
I was actually in like I was not in the best headspace at the time. Like, and I needed that episode that we did to like remind me of who I am. And all that was from you just asking, the right kinds of questions, I guess, that gave me that opportunity. And one of the things that like that kind of consistently reminds me of is because similarly something happened this past week where I unlocked a new idea for the business through this event that I hosted. And the purpose of the event was to showcase not myself, but showcase other people. And I keep finding like there's these like moments of growth when you actually put the spotlight on someone else instead of
Yes.
trying to find new ways to put it on yourself.
Nodding rigorously for listeners. Chris Orlob, who I know you know, he was my marketing mentor. He taught me this accidentally through a blog he had written, which was like basically when when things are going poorly for us individually, it's common for us to dwell on us and our needs, and that's actually feeds desperation,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns off an abundance mindset, and we become scarcity mindset. Right. So when you're operating
Yeah.
from a desperate, scarce mindset, a great idea can literally stamp itself on your desk and you're not going to see it, or you read it but it doesn't hit the way you need it to hit. And I have recently discovered this about myself, Raj. When I'm in a, I don't know, call it a bad mood, any of the emotions we don't wish to feel,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, instead of just like dwelling on that, like there's a good place for self-reflection, but I'm like, yo, let me go pour into someone else's cup. So I'll leave voicemail. I'll do voice memos. Hey, what's up, Julian? It's been like 3 weeks since we talked, man. I just want to tell you I loved working with you, dude. Like, you're so fucking good at product marketing. It's stupid how good you are. That's it. I've got nothing. Hope you have a good Thursday. Boom. And I'll do one or two of those randomly, right? And what's cool is I send them, forget them. I feel a little better. But then like weeks or months later, someone will hit me up and be like, hey, man, I just was having a shit week. And that voice memo like turned my day around. Thank you for like,
that's awesome.
You know what I mean? And that's not even to like, oh, pat me on the back. It's just like wild how like, again, you think of how can I not make it about me? How can I pour in someone else's cup? And actually both of us feel better for that instead of that internal doom spiral that I like. I used to do that all the time. So I'm like constantly focusing on how to avoid that, you know?
There is my wife and I teach pretty much annually for the last like 5 years. We might have skipped 1 year, but we teach a New Year's Day yoga class that is paired with a prosperity themed meditation. And then that starts, like, anyone who's in that class now is part of a 40-day prosperity meditation challenge, if you will. So you do this same specific breathing exercise and chant this mantra for 7 minutes every day for 40 days. And the consistent sort of theme that we offer in that is we almost always, when we hear the word prosperity, we think about money.
Mm-hmm.
And we think about, what do I want? And how, like, what am I going to get out of this? And the switch flip is, how do you, like, prosperity is how do you serve others? And when you start thinking in that mindset, you help yourself, you serve yourself in the process. So, and like, this is especially true, like when we get into those ruts, like to that point that Orlob was saying, like we pull ourselves deeper down and we're like, I'm not getting this. Oh, why won't someone recognize me? Why is this happening to me? And then it's weird. Every time this happens, almost instantly, once we start looking outward and being like, well, how could I help this person? How could I do something nice for this person? Whatever. Not only does our mindset start to shift, but then something good happens for us in the process.
Yeah.
And then we pull ourselves out of it. So it's so much about, like, you know, and I think there's like that general platitude of like, yes, you must serve others. And like, that's kind of what this is, but I think in a more like real sense.
Yeah, plus to your point, being a platitude, like all those things and like cliches, like all of them have good intent and meaning, but we've heard it so many times worded that way that it kind of like, you kind of roll your eyes and it doesn't like soak into your brain. One tactical thing, if folks want it and if interesting, is like when I recognize it, I pull up my calendar and I just go look at my calendar. Where does Shali, my wife, where does she need help at this week? What's one thing I can take off her plate? Maybe it's take a half day off work and tell her to get out of the house and go get a massage, or just go hang out with her friends, whatever. Like just something to like give her a better day or better week, right? Yeah. Or like, oh, my 2 girls, what would just make them like smile, like something cool. You know what? We're going to do a dad pool party at 2 p.m. on Thursday. Forget calls, we're going to go jump in the pool. Like, and when you bring joy to other people like that, that is the thing that like, you forget why you were mad. You forget why you were disappointed anyway. So that's what I do. Pull up the calendar, find something to do for somebody, or that voice memo thing I mentioned earlier. Like those are kind of my 2 go-tos right now.
Why haven't I gotten a voice memo?
I will, because we text pretty frequently. I'll send you one. No, you're right.
You're like,
I
it's
owe
going to
you.
be
I'll
so
give
out
you
of
the one.
place if there's like a, hey, we haven't talked in a while voicemail.
No, I do those too, though. Sometimes, like if I'm driving and I think of some, here's the thing too. I'm really bad at this. Is like I'll think nice things about people and like memories, and then I just won't tell them. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, that was like, yeah, I really, like I'll see something you've done, and I'll be like, man, that's so cool. I'm proud of that dude for doing that, and it'll just stay in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked on this. I'm like, why don't I just call, text, DM somebody and say positive things? And I'm like, probably some insecurity or probably some like, do they give a shit? Like,
Yeah.
and that's why I was saying with the voice memo, the reason I brought up the positive feedback was like, oh yeah, Dev, like this actually makes an impact for people. It's so small, but it has a big impact. So yeah, man, next time I see you online, which I do a lot, and I think highly of you, I'll DM you, because we all need to pick me up, man. And it's not to be corny or cheesy. It's like, dude, every time I've done it or someone reached out to me, it's like, fuck, I needed that. Thanks, man.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is like, if I know I've got some drive time in the car, is just having a catch-up call. And it doesn't have to be with like a professional contact. It can be with a friend or someone who has become a friend through professional stuff. But like, I almost like, if I know I've got like an hour and a half drive, I almost like look forward to it. I'm like, yes, I can call, my friend Pablo. I can call whoever, like I can call them and catch up, for at least like 30 minutes of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so, and I think this is actually more problematic with people with the younger generations now, or generation, but as the youth, quote unquote, is coming of age and like in adulthood.
We know we're old when we start saying the
youth. Is I think that ability to like have casual, unstructured conversation that does not have any goal behind it, I think is very much like an art that's being lost.
Yeah, it's a connection, right? It's like, and that's what I think I've always liked about our relationship too, is like, even though I don't know if we've talked on the phone in a little while, but like we jumped on this thing. We jumped up. What'd you say?
It's like, because you never pick up.
Because I never pick up. I try. My phone is on silent so much. But like I think it's two things. One is like a symbol of a good friendship, and also of the ability to connect with someone, is like when I jumped on this call, whatever, 20, 30 minutes ago before you hit record, there wasn't awkward. We just jumped on it was like I saw you yesterday. Like, and it's like, it's cool that we have that, but I think it's a skill we both probably have from sales and marketing and presenting, of like, it's a skill to be able to just not be awkward and to just talk and to listen and engage with somebody. And I know that sounds so basic, but I think we are craving that more than ever. And yeah, I've got a 17-year-old brother. I'm 35. So, you can put there's a generational age gap there. And it's the same thing where like, he sucks at texting of any meaning. He doesn't pick up the phone. He's really tough to talk to. And I don't judge him, and I'm not being a jerk.
Burying your brother live on air.
Just like, his name's Ashton Reed. I don't give a shit. But like, and so I've noticed, but I tell my dad struggles even more. He's a generation older than me, and he calls me. He's like, I can't get your brother on the phone. I can't. I'm like, dude, you just like, I don't know what to tell you. It's not him. It's millions. There's millions of kids just like him. And so it's like, be patient, keep practicing and keep trying. And eventually they pick up. And eventually, I think you hit that age of like, you want a lot of isolation in your teens and like independence. And then you come back to your parents later when you realize how hard life is as a young adult. You're like, oh shit, my bad. I didn't know how hard it was and how much you helped me.
Yeah. So I also think part of it though, naturally, is like, so the basis of our relationship was a podcast, right? Like I had you on the show 6 years ago, and then we were like, hey, we're both cool people. Let's keep in touch.
I like this guy.
Essentially. And then when Gong was in town for a conference, we got to meet in person and all that stuff. But aside from like the structured nature of that first interaction, there wasn't really like a get for either of us. Right. It wasn't like there was no angle. There was not like a transaction being made or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of this like lost art, is we keep thinking there's supposed to be some like reward on the other side of having a conversation with someone. Like it needs to lead to a sale or it needs to whatever. But, so much of what I think generally makes healthy relationships work is like, it's just predicated on like, you both fulfill, each other, you both fill each other's cup and nothing more than that. I'm not like, oh, hey, I saw Devin doing this podcast. Let me figure out how I can now piggyback off of that and now get some leads my way. Right.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I think too, as you are, if you're in the public eye, you know, and you're, especially if you're running a business, it can be tempting. And there's a lot of people that operate that way. But I don't know, maybe it's where I am in my life. I've never really like networking for that reason, because it feels like you're going to an event with other people to like get something, I guess. I don't know.
Mm.
That was always kind of ick to me. Um, but yeah, when you reached out, I remember, because I was like so new in marketing. I'm like, what? I think you're like, if not the first, like the second person to ever ask me to be on a podcast to talk about marketing. And I was like, this guy might not know what he's talking about if he wants me on the show. Like, we'll find out. And then we're talking about wrestling and rap. And it kind of like, I think it also introduced me like, oh, people could just reach out that are actually cool and don't want anything. And so, you know, be open. I'm a fairly guarded person. At least I used to be a lot more guarded. So I think too, is like, I do allow people in a little, you know, like kind of like, let me see what their intention is. But that's what I look for more, is like, do I like spending time with this person? Do they give, or do they take energy? And is it like effortless? You know,
Yeah.
like I don't want to always do the like bullshit small talk every time I talk to somebody. Like that sucks.
So our conversation was supposed to be about content, but I think this is a better conversation.
Okay. Do you want me to
do
jump
a
back on?
part 2 like next week, and we'll
yeah. We can do it. I know. I feel bad and great. I loved this conversation, but I also know I promised you content stuff, and I now have to jump.
All right, everybody. For everybody listening, stay tuned for part 2 of this conversation.